Hey, gentlemen, here we are again. Not a lot to report, but some. Pecking away at it. Not going to be done by the end of the month. That's alright. Anyway, what have we done last night after recording that video and this evening? Well, I started defining a critter. Pardon me, data type. We can't call them characters because that gets confused with like ASCII characters. We can't call them player characters because I want to use the same access modifier functions to deal with both the player characters and the monsters and all of the different creatures. I think that'll be like unified and efficient and happy. I thought about calling them actors, but then after all that Alec Baldwin shit, I realized how much disdain I have for actors. Um, so I didn't want to stain the source code with such a word. So I decided to call them critters because that's so much better, isn't it? Anyhow, so I defined a critter structure. It's not very big yet. It's basically just got a name and some stats in it, but that's fine. We're using the seven DND stats, including the comeliness stat from pardon me, the Oriental Adventures source book for first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. However, most of the mechanics, I'm not going to slavishly copy the mechanics from Dan Lawrence's game because, quite frankly, the mechanics are crazy. I mean, it's cool for a computer, but part of the fun for me in like an old school computer role playing game like this is also using like old school tabletop mechanics like we would have found in like SSI games and shit. My very favorite um, old school tabletop game mechanics are the BX edition of the basic D&D boxed set with the spells and treasure tables from the later rules cyclopedia and separate race and class imported from first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, as well as some multi-classing house rules. Um, but of course, most of that stuff's copyrighted by TSR now WotC, so we can't use that, but we can use the Dark Dungeons game, which happens to be uh, public domain for the most part. Public domain and OGL. We can deal with the OGL content when we get to it. So that's basically a uh, uh, retro clone, shall we call it, of the Rules Cyclopedia, the basic D&D Rules Cyclopedia. And I like the Rules Cyclopedia, but when they expanded the levels from 1 to 14 to 1 to 36, they really broke the thieving abilities, especially. The thief class is very broken in Rules Cyclopedia. I don't know if they fixed it in Dark Dungeons or not. We'll have to look and see. But in any case, that's the story that I'm going with. It's all based on this public domain Dark Dungeon mechanic and text. I'm not going to be using any of the BX or Rules Cyclopedia rules whatsoever, boys. No siree. No siree. Mm-mm. Not a bit. That would be rude. Not a bit of them. Not a bit of them. Nope. Right. Anyhow, let's get back to looking at this code before I incriminate myself. So, yeah, we just got some stats and a name. We've got some accessor functions that are defined over here in critter.c. I'm not saving or loading critters to disk yet. There'll be the player characters and the adventuring party will be stored in a save file separate from the dungeon itself. I'll talk about that later when we get there. But like the critters within the dungeon will be saved in the dungeon data structure. So we'll have to add that at some point. But yeah, we can get the stats and we can get the stat modifiers if you're familiar with how D&D works and all of that stuff. So after that was done, I was like, yeah, okay. And I stole some code out of an old BXD&D character generator for PHP that I wrote a long time ago. It's actually a hack of a Labyrinth Lord character generator, but it's got all of these name lists in it that it generates random names for characters that it generates. And see, I've got all of these, like, there's dwarven last names here, I've got halfling last names, I've got like female Norse first names, male Norse first names, Greek names, orc names, elf names, which mostly seem to be out of the Silmarillion, so I don't know if I can use those or not. Hopefully nobody will care. Surely the Tolkien estate didn't trademark any of those. Well, you can't put anything past the Tolkien estate, can you? They're almost as bad as the Frank Zappa estate, aren't they? Anyhow, yeah, so I haven't written any code to generate random names with these tables yet, but I did write some shitty code that takes these text files and just converts them into a simple binary file that's padded out to 16 bytes for each name. That way we can just use an offset. An offset when we're calculating, like pulling a random word out of these tables. We don't have to read the whole table into memory because some of them are kind of big and that would be slow. Since we have a known offset when we're generating random names, we'll just generate a random number, multiply it by this 16 byte multiplier here, and since there's zero paddage, we can just read 16 bytes and then sprintf the first and last name together, and we'll have a name. So that'll be a little more efficient than reading all of these files into memory every time we want to generate a random name, because of course we won't want to keep all that shit in memory all the time. We'll just generate a name and be done with it. That'll only happen when you're recruiting party members, which is way down the road. I don't know why I started farting around with this. It could be that I had an attack of laziness, which happens. So anyway, that's the deal for today's update. Thanks for joining me. Even though I think it's strange that you got this far, if any of you actually did. Alright, bye now.